Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Thrive, Not Just Survive. I'm your host, Nasira Jamal, and I am so grateful that you guys are all joining in and in different conversations. And thank you for the messages you've been sending privately to me in terms of how you're finding this level of awareness when we talk about Black Lives Matter, when we talk about social equality and things that are going on in the world. COVID-19 has brought about a lot of unrest on many different levels, not just our health and our medical systems, but it has brought about this whole idea about the value of a human life. And I want to talk to Dr. Bryantbruce, continue this conversation so that we don't not just talk about all of the problems, but really look at what are some of the solutions and what are we doing as individuals and as tribes, as groups of people coming together with a higher level of awareness. So let's bring Dr. Cheryl on so we can get this conversation started. Hey, Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me again.
Hey, Nasira, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excellent.
Good,
You know,
excellent.
it's always nice to know that on Fridays that we can use this platform to really address some of the things, not just what's going on, because we see it in the news and it is part of life, right? Like, we're all seeing these things and sometimes we almost get immune to it. Like, what's the bad news story today? And my whole goal about doing Thrive, Not Just Survive was not to really just reiterate all the negativity that's out there and all of the discourse, but really talk about it from the human level of who we are as a human race and what is it that we really want to create, like for our generations to come, right? And so
hmm
today I want to really talk about it from that angle. Like, what is our responsibility? What is everyone's responsibility while we're
hmm
going through this time? So I
hmm
want to pick your brain.
Okay. Well, this week has been a very, very difficult week because there have been some big things going on in the news. And one of the things that is happening is that we're now starting to see people reacting because all of this has been going on for so long. And the suicide rates are going up, the depression rates are going up. People are really starting to be impacted emotionally. People are feeling disheartened. People are feeling a bit helpless. And we're seeing things that we had hoped not to be seeing at this point in time, especially when we're talking about social accountability. We recently had one event in the news where a 17-year-old white male killed several people in front of the police, carrying a submachine gun down the street, and the police did not apprehend him. They actually offered him water, praised him, thanked him, and the young man was from Wisconsin. He went. His mother drove him to the state of Illinois for this to happen, and he was allowed to actually leave the state of Illinois and go all the way back to Wisconsin without being apprehended. He has been arrested now. I don't know if he's been charged yet. I feel that not only should he be charged, but his mother should be charged because he did murder two people and he shot a young man in the arm. Um, there has to be a level of accountability for everybody. There has to be a level of accountability for the perpetrator of such crime. And it doesn't matter which side they're on. You know, there have been issues of violence with Black Lives Matters, although it has been repeatedly shown now that this is usually being caused by infiltrators in the crowd who are often actually law enforcement individuals who are, in plain clothes and inciting these things. So when that happens, that there needs to be accountability there too. You know, don't blame Black Lives Matters for that. If we know that these are law enforcement individuals that are inciting violence so that there can be more violence, again, we need to hold law enforcement accountable for that as well. Or if we know that these are hate groups that are inciting this, we need to hold the hate groups accountable. Moreover, though, we need to hold ourselves accountable for looking at these things and saying, what can I do at this point? What part can I play? When we see these things happening, we can do something. We see it happening, we can write in to officials in those areas and we can say, we're better than this. And we need you to hold yourselves accountable. We need justice to prevail. We need you to behave in the manner that the law dictates. When a young man, now Wisconsin is or Illinois is a carry state. You can carry a weapon, and you can open carry a weapon. But when even in Wisconsin, a 17-year-old, a young man can't carry a weapon. And this was obviously a young man. When you looked at him, he was a young man. And when you have groups of people in the street and a young man, openly carrying like that, um, who is obviously in opposition of what's going on, at some point it should have been the responsibility of the police looking at this very young appearing person to say, does this person have the right to carry this weapon? And is he going to do so responsibly? And they were praising him for regulating the situation. When does it become the job of a 17-year-old to regulate? Why is it not the responsibility of the adults to do that, particularly when law enforcement is already present? Wasn't that their job?
Right.
So we have a responsibility to hold law enforcement accountable to doing their job. We have a responsibility to hold white people accountable for being decent citizens and for showing humanity. We have a responsibility to hold Black people accountable for doing the same. And I believe we have a responsibility to be accountable ourselves for, again, examining our own thought processes and asking ourselves, what is humanity? What do we represent? Who are we? And how are we coming forward and exemplifying that? And we are our brother's keepers. And if our brother is misbehaving, don't we have a responsibility to say, stop, this is wrong? And who are you? Who do you want to be? And if this is somebody who is desiring to operate outside of who we're supposed to be, then we have an accountability to monitor this person and to
I
make
think
sure.
that's a really good point, right? Like, it's sometimes people kind of taking the back seat saying, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be, like I don't want to start the fight, or I don't have it,
Mhm,
that power. There's nothing I can do, right? But I
mhm.
think that if that mindset can shift for every single person
Yes.
to say even a little bit of
Mhm.
taking that stand, or at least saying this is not right,
Yes. Yes.
sometimes that silence says more than the
Yes.
words that are coming out of our mouth. And
Yes,
and I
it
think
does.
that's where the awareness is going to have to rise, is to say, if it's wrong, then to be able to be strong enough, courageous enough to say this is wrong,
Yes,
and then that
absolutely.
that that really determines what side of the fence you're standing on in terms of justice, in terms
Yes.
of, the human race, right? Not about
Mhm.
color anymore. It's just about the
Exactly.
human race living in harmony. What are we really standing for in terms of the legacy that we want to leave behind for generations to come? And is this going to be a fight for them to continue fighting? Are we not going to make any leeway here? Are we not making strides? Because now in 2020, if we're still having this kind of conversation of justice of what the police are able to do or should be doing, and
Mhm.
if there's a crime happening, it should be black and white to some degree to say this is wrong, right? Like if
Mhm.
you murder somebody, there in no amount of any book or justice system can that be right.
Mhm.
Right? So
Exactly.
murder is murder is murder, and no matter who is holding that gun, black or white, or it doesn't matter. It
Exactly.
should be equality. It should be justice for all, and in a very, it's such a simple, like it seems simple to say right and wrong. It's black and white of that, and I
Mhm.
don't mean it by color of person's skin.
Yes.
I just mean
Yes.
where we stand on it. So I just
Yes.
think this is the conversation: is which side of the fence are you on? And you not
Exactly. And
saying something is taking a stand.
yes, and when you say which side of the fence are you on, you really have to define that for yourself, what that fence is. I mean, there is right and there is wrong, and we can justify wrong in all kinds of different ways, but it is still just justification. And one of the things that I saw that was very powerful very early in this, people were sending out videos and memes and things like that. And I saw a film that someone sent out, and it was called Switched. We talked about it once previously, but I want to come back to it because it portrayed a situation where it was depicting what would have happened if uh, in an event where, in the end, um, a white male ended up dead on the ground, and it explored the feelings and everything around it. It showed how it led up to this, and the sentiment was, oh, this poor young man that was disparaged, and then he ended up dead, and it was clearly wrong. And then at the end of the film, they switched the picture and switched it back to what really happened and made it a black man that it happened to. And I think that that was a good thought process. I mean, it left me in tears. The whole process left me in tears. And for me, it was equally impactful both ways. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do. We have to examine it. We see a situation happen and we see it from our point of view. But if we take a step back and put ourselves into the shoes of the other person, or we switch the scenario and flip flop the sides and allow ourselves to look at it objectively, is our position then still correct? Or have we justified it? Have we made excuses for ourselves?
Yeah.
And even in as far as accountability for taking action, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and say, well, this doesn't involve me, or, well, what can I do? I'm not even in the area. We can make those excuses for ourselves. It's easy to do. But flip yourself to the other side. If you were in the same situation, would you want the world to sit by idly and watch and say, well, it doesn't involve me. It's not my country. It's not my state. It's not my neighborhood. What can I do? We can all do something, even if it's just talking to our neighbors about it. Our neighbors may be locked into an idea, an opinion, an ideology that is incorrect, that is unjust, unfair, that is inhumane. And just talking to our neighbor can shift our universe right where we live. And we can do things like writing letters to express our dissidence with what we're seeing happen.
Yeah. I think that, this idea of, just like when you say talk to the neighbor, right? We are a collective consciousness, like in an energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
There is something that's going on that perhaps for some they might think, oh, this is kind of out of the realm of what they want to, what they really
Yes.
think, right? But
Mm-hmm.
energetically, we are contributing to the discourse or to the piece that is at a conscious energetic level. And so
Yes.
like when you say talk to the neighbors, talk to the children, talk to whoever's around you to bring the awareness, and then let people have that ability, right, to say, well, that is really unjust, or what do I think, or how do I
Yes.
feel? Because now we're
Yes.
all part of that collective consciousness, and
Yes.
we need to raise that level of consciousness to a higher degree of empathy. And this is,
Yes.
I've been being trained on emotional intelligence and how the world right now needs the nth degree of emotional
Oh
intelligence,
yes.
right? The
Oh yes.
IQ cannot be changed, and whatever that is. But we can truly be a part of the change of the world that we want to create. Will have
Yes.
to come from this place of empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is where we will all rise. We will all rise together beyond color, beyond creed, beyond religion.
Yes.
Is really
Yes.
about standing up for humankind, mankind. And so that's why I think, when we converse like this, it's great because people could be listening on replay or live and kind of just think about it. And maybe during that day, be a little bit more aware. And as they go out and have their day with whatever's going on, maybe that conversation will come up. And maybe this is where we all make that decision that, you know what, I'm going to be part of the conversation.
And the thing is that you don't even have to agree with the other person. You can agree to disagree. I'm not saying, to take up arms and go down to the protest and put yourself in front of the shooter and say, this is wrong, and get yourself shot. I'm not saying to do that. But you can speak to people who you may not necessarily agree with. And sometimes someone is stuck on stupid, and it's going to become a heated conversation that is not at the moment going to change anything. So don't get yourself so twisted up in it that it becomes a fight. Listen to what they're saying. You be the one to take the high road. Listen to what they're saying. Hear what they're saying. If you see where there's fallaciousness in their way of thinking, try to point it out. And if you see it's not going anywhere, then agree to disagree and say, but I would like for you, I'm going to leave this conversation now, but I would like for you to think about this one point before I go, and pick out the one salient point that you want to drive home, that we're all in this together, and that we do have to get along, that everybody is equal, and whatever the point happens to be in that particular conversation, make your point, state it clearly, give them a one-liner to think about, and just ask them, please, I would like you to just think about this. We're going to agree to disagree. All I'm asking is for you to think about this singular point, and then walk away.
Okay, so I want to actually jump in here because I am now a certified trainer in terms of communication, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about this because it's one thing to have our opinion, because we do. We have a personality, we have our own
Mm-hmm.
belief systems, we have whatever it is that we feel we need to stand up for or stand up against or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are four personalities in this world, four different
Mm-hmm.
types of people who think differently, first,
Mm-hmm.
let's acknowledge that you and I think
Yes,
different. We have
of
a
course.
different value system, and we have a different wiring of how we communicate and what resonates with us. So
Yes.
if we can take this conversation and look at the other person, and the conversation perhaps is not meeting somewhere where there's agreement, and there doesn't have to be, you can agree to disagree. But
Yes.
what about taking that person and saying, okay, so which personality code is the person you're talking to? Perhaps they are a knowledge-based person. And this, of course, goes much deeper. You got to know the 4 personalities, and you have to know the values of each one and know what really triggers them to buy in or triggers them to totally move away from you.
Yes.
But maybe there's a conversation we need to have as to how do you converse with that particular type of person so that there can be impact from that perspective. Not that we're going to shove our belief or our thing down their throat, but
Yes.
what about if we could have this conversation from their perspective and looking at it from their lens, saying, oh, so they see it this way. So what if I position what I want to talk about from that lens? Not to say that you are just going to turn around and agree with what they're saying, but position your conversation from their lens and then talk about it, because then they may be able to see it differently from the value systems of that personality. Like I'm so taken by this whole idea of these 4 different types of people, and we're trying to talk to them in one way. We think
Yes.
that our way is the right way, and this is the way it is, and we need to talk like this. But I think we need to shift that and saying, well, who are you, and how can I have this conversation with you that will be more impactful because it'll come from your value system, what you feel is important.
Yes.
And I think this is where, that's why I'm so passionate now about teaching this, is because we can really change the world when we know the other person's personality and speak from that angle. So Anne-Marie just asked about, she's asking, like, how can we start that conversation? Well, depending on, and I'm going to let you answer it too, but I think depending on who that person is, whether it's somebody you know personally, or maybe it's somebody you've never met before and having a conversation, of course it's going to vary, but figure out their personality and then speak to them from that perspective.
And I think that it also is going to depend on what exactly the conversation is, because it is going to differ from conversation to conversation. And I think the first thing that is necessary for understanding or for starting the conversation is really understanding what the conversation is, hearing what the other person is saying, hearing the viewpoint that they're expressing. Because the one point that I do want to make here is we do all have our own way of seeing things, and people may be on the opposite side, and they may be on the side of what we perceive as wrong, but they may have some valid points. And, I would like to say that generally, anytime that we're speaking to somebody, if we can grab hold of the points that they have as valid and acknowledge those points, but say, but here's the other side of that, and here are the valid points on my side. Can you see them? If we just go in there throwing rocks and saying you're wrong, they're already putting up their walls. They're already putting up their defenses, and they can't hear anything that we're going to say.
Yeah, I think at the human level, everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be acknowledged, right? That's a human need that we all have. And I think I love the point that you said, like, go in with just first listening to what they have to say, and instead of
with the intent of hearing it. Yeah, with the intent of hearing it. Don't listen. Don't listen with the intent of, okay, I'm listening for my counterpoints. I'm listening for how I'm going to prove my point. Listen to what they're having to say. I mean, one example, I will use myself as the example here. I firmly believe in the presidency of the United States. I am, however, not for the standing president. I firmly support America. I do not believe in the America that he's putting out. Yet, however, as much as I disagree with the man, I did listen to him speak at the convention. And I had to constantly take myself out of myself because my first response was, he's an idiot. And I kept defaulting back to, he's just an idiot. But I had to take myself out of myself and say, but what is he saying? Listen to what he is saying. Now, I still walked away with my opinion that he's an idiot, but I did walk away saying that some of his points were valid. I also walked away with understanding, a better understanding of what's happening with the people who are following him, because I'm hearing the rhetoric and how he's spinning it. So instead of just saying, oh, well, those people who are following him are stupid, I'm hearing what he's saying and understanding how they could follow him, and even more importantly, why they're following him, what pain point he is acknowledging and using to get them to follow him. And that's important, that you understand what the other person's pain point is, because we all, to a certain degree, respond from an emotional level, or actually, I won't even say to a certain degree, we all respond from an emotional level. We all have lots of different pain points. And if someone is giving an answer to those pain points, if someone is giving us something that makes us feel better about those pain points, we are going to move in that direction. We are going to gravitate towards having ourselves in more of a position of comfort every single time, unless we consciously say, is getting my pain point relieved a good thing or a bad thing? Is this the right thing?
Right. Yeah, totally. I think you're so dead on, right? Like it's that even if it's you disagree with the person, like you mentioned, like the president at hand, you have your own. You've already made that decision. You've seen whatever
Mhm,
you've seen, and you've made a decision based on that knowledge that that's how you feel, right?
mhm,
But
mhm,
you still took the time, as hard as it might have been, to listen and see some of these points, right? And I think
mhm,
that just goes with anybody we're talking to. We may not agree, we may disagree, we may have differing opinions, but to really listen and hear and sort of take it from that angle, again, wearing that lens of the other person
mhm,
for a moment without this, where you want to just respond, where you want to just have your points heard, right? Because that is, again, it's a learned skill, because we
mhm.
typically are coming from, how am I going to respond? How am I going to say
Yes.
back to whatever Cheryl's talking about? What's my sentence, right? Whereas I'm now just listening. I don't have
Mhm.
to know what to say next. If I can just listen, right there, we're making some headway. So
Yes.
I'm coming up to half hour. I mean, Ken, this conversation can go on, and we are. That's why we're continuing weekly to bring this to the table, have some different ways of communicating so people can resonate in different ways and agree or disagree. So I want to encourage people to continue their conversations in their own circles, right? And that's what we're just saying. Let's do that. Let's encourage people to continue the conversation. So I want to thank you for
Yes.
your time today. I want to wish you a wonderful weekend. And until next week, I hope you stay blessed, and always love you.
Love you too, Nasira, and I will see you again next week.
Excellent. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, so you guys, if you're watching live, I can see that some of you are, and if you're watching replay, #replay. That really helps actually for other people to see the video, and so I want to encourage you to do that. That's part of just some Facebook algorithms. When they see that there's been comments in the thread of the video, more people will see it. So let's get together. Let's support each other in our works, in our videos, and especially because the social media world and the platforms we're using is inundated with information, and if we can support each other, then we can get that much further in all of our messages and how we want to be seen in the world. So with that being said, I want to wish you all a wonderful Friday, a happy, healthy, prosperous weekend. And I want to just remind you that, if you have comments, if you want to get in touch with me or with Dr. Cheryl, to go ahead and message us on Facebook. So have a great weekend. Be kind to yourself and to others. I will see you on Monday morning at 10 a.m.